What happens when a leader returns from 17 years in exile and captures more than two-thirds of a national parliament in the first election after a mass uprising? In Bangladesh, over 60% of voters simultaneously endorsed an 80-plus reform charter while handing a landslide victory to a single party. This video examines how Tarique Rahman's sudden ascent to Prime Minister could reshape South Asian power politics, economic alignment, and democratic structures across a region of nearly 2 billion people, without yet revealing whether this shift stabilizes or unsettles the balance. If this transition consolidates democratic reform, Bangladesh could emerge as a more institutionally constrained parliamentary system with clearer term limits and structural checks. If it falters, the country risks renewed polarization in a strategically vital corridor between India and Southeast Asia. With global supply chains, Bay of Bengal maritime routes, and regional security dynamics at stake, the direction taken in Dhaka will ripple far beyond its borders. Tarique Rahman was sworn in by President Mohammed Shahabuddin in a televised ceremony outside the parliament complex in Dhaka, days after the Bangladesh Nationalist Party secured at least 212 seats in the 350-seat Jatiya Sangsad. Elections were held in 299 constituencies, producing a two-thirds majority for the BNP and its allies, while Jamaat-e-Islami and partners captured 77 seats. Sheikh Hasina's Awami League, dominant for over a decade and a half, was barred from contesting following the 2024 student-led uprising that forced her removal and installed an interim administration for 18 months. To understand this moment, you have to trace the deeper rivalry between the BNP and the Awami League, two parties that have alternated power since the 1990s. Sheikh Hasina led Bangladesh from 2009 until her ouster in 2024, presiding over rapid economic expansion that lifted per capita income from roughly $700 in 2009 to more than $2,700 by 2023. Yet her tenure was also marked by allegations of authoritarian drift, contested elections in 2014 and 2018, and growing youth frustration over governance, employment, and representation. The July 2024 uprising emerged from university campuses and spread nationwide, driven by students who demanded structural reforms rather than merely a change of faces. The interim government that followed organized a referendum alongside the general election. More than 60% of voters approved the July National Charter, a sweeping document proposing term limits for prime ministers, a bicameral parliament, and constraints on unilateral constitutional amendments by ruling parties. The referendum's approval gives Rahman both a mandate and a binding reform roadmap. Rahman's political journey complicates the narrative. Son of former President Ziaur Rahman and BNP leader Khaleda Zia, he spent 17 years abroad after legal cases and political tensions escalated under Hasina's government. His return symbolizes both continuity within dynastic politics and a reset following the uprising. During his oath, he pledged to discharge his duties according to law, signaling alignment with the reform framework endorsed by voters. Foreign dignitaries attended the ceremony, including Pakistan's foreign minister and the Speaker of India's parliament, underscoring Bangladesh's strategic centrality. The country of 170 million people sits between India and Myanmar, anchors the northern Bay of Bengal, and has become the world's second-largest garment exporter after China. Its stability influences regional trade flows exceeding $1 trillion annually across South Asia. India's relationship with Bangladesh evolved significantly under Hasina, particularly on security cooperation and connectivity. Cross-border transit agreements, counter-terrorism collaboration, and energy trade deepened bilateral ties. However, critics argue that New Delhi became overly reliant on a single political partner, limiting engagement with opposition forces and civil society. When the 2024 uprising displaced Hasina, India faced a recalibration challenge. Administrative delays, cautious diplomacy, and a perception of slow adaptation created space for other regional actors to reassert influence. While it would be simplistic to attribute Bangladesh's political transformation to external missteps alone, regional observers note that India's reactive posture reduced its leverage during the transition. The BNP historically favors recalibrated foreign policy balancing, including engagement with China and improved ties with Pakistan. Bangladesh is already a participant in China's Belt and Road Initiative, hosting infrastructure investments valued at more than $10 billion. Any shift in Dhaka's diplomatic alignment will affect India's eastern security perimeter and maritime calculations in the Bay of Bengal. What if the Reform Charter is implemented in full within the next parliamentary cycle? A two-chamber system could dilute executive dominance and create procedural barriers to rapid constitutional change. Term limits would structurally prevent prolonged single-leader rule, addressing one of the uprising's central grievances. Institutional predictability could attract foreign direct investment, which reached roughly $3.5 billion annually before recent instability. In this scenario, Bangladesh might evolve into a more competitive but stable parliamentary democracy, strengthening its negotiating position with both India and China. But what if implementation stalls or political rivalry resurfaces? A two-thirds majority enables sweeping legislative action, yet it also concentrates power. If reform timelines slip or opposition voices feel marginalized, protests could re-emerge. Bangladesh has experienced cycles of hartals, blockades, and political violence in previous decades. Renewed instability would disrupt exports that account for over 12% of GDP and undermine investor confidence. Regional powers could respond by intensifying influence efforts, deepening strategic competition in the Bay of Bengal. Rahman also inherits security complexities. Islamist militancy has been largely contained compared to the mid-2000s, but sporadic threats persist. Maintaining counter-terrorism cooperation while broadening diplomatic options will require calibrated decision-making. Meanwhile, climate vulnerability remains acute. Bangladesh loses an estimated 1% of GDP annually to climate-related impacts, making governance capacity essential for adaptation planning. The youth factor remains decisive. Bangladesh's median age is around 27. The students who catalyzed the 2024 uprising expect representation and tangible governance reforms. Failure to translate referendum commitments into legislative architecture could erode the BNP's legitimacy faster than previous administrations experienced. Conversely, credible reform execution would validate electoral participation as a tool for systemic change rather than cyclical confrontation. As Rahman forms his cabinet and begins implementing the July National Charter, the central question is not merely who governs Bangladesh, but how power will be structured and constrained. The electorate has delivered both authority and instruction. The coming months will test whether institutional redesign can outpace entrenched rivalries. For observers across South Asia, the next signals to watch are legislative sequencing, foreign policy appointments, and the pace of constitutional amendments. In a region where leadership changes often reshape strategic alignments, Bangladesh now stands at a crossroads between consolidation and renewed contestation, with consequences that extend well beyond Dhaka's parliament grounds.